The north had always been cold, but tonight it felt colder than ever. Winterfell stood as proud and silent as a tomb, the snow blanketing its towers and battlements like the hush before a funeral. Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, stood, alone on the battlements, staring out at the swirling white beyond the walls. It had been nearly 17 years since the Tower of Joy, 17 long years since he'd buried his sister. Lyanna buried a truth that burned him more than any blade ever could. The wind howled. It whispered in tongues only ghosts understood. He could still see its 7 men against 3. His companions, now all dead. And then there was him, Seer Arthur Dayne, the sword of the morning, the man who should have killed him. Ned had never lied to himself about that. If not for Howland Reed's intervention, Arthur would have ended his life cleanly. And perhaps that would have been mercy, because what followed had been far worse: lies, war, secrets, and the silent promise made to a dying sister in a bed of blood. But what haunted him wasn't just the memory of Arthur's skill or the guilt of survival. It was the way Arthur had looked at him, not with hate, not even anger, but disappointment. And now, all these years later, he was back. It began with whispers. A group of Night's Watch rangers stumbled upon a camp beyond the Frostfangs. All dead, but one man was seen before the massacre. A tall knight with a silver sword that gleamed like starlight. A blade that matched no metal known to the north. Then came the reports from the Riverlands. An entire Lannister convoy ambushed and destroyed. Their gold stolen, their men cut down, not like brigands had done it, like knights, like a warrior, who still followed the old codes. And then the letter arrived. No name, no seal, only words, written in a sharp, elegant hand that Ned hadn't seen in years. I did not fall. Meet me where it ended. Ned's hand shook as he read it again, alone. In his chambers, no one knew. Not Catelyn, not Maester Luwin. He didn't tell Jon, he COULDN. Single quotes too, because if Arthur Dayne was alive, then everything Ned had built, everything he had protected, was at risk. Jon.Lyann, a single quotes S son. Would Arthur forgive him? Would he understand why Ned did what he did? Or had the years twisted him into something else, something dark? He didn't sleep that night. By morning, Ned had ordered his men to prepare horses. He gave Robb the command of Winterfell in his absence. He told them it was a diplomatic mission to Riverrun. A lie, another lie. He took only 2 men with him. Harwin, a young knight of his household guard, and Jory Castle, loyal as ever. But even they didn't know where they were headed, until the Towers of Dawn came into view weeks later. And finally, they reached Ita ruins of the Tower of Joy. It was silent, the stones scorched and broken, still bearing the scars of battle. The tomb of a past that refused to stay buried. Harwin looked uneasy. Jory kept his hand on his sword. Ned stood motionless, staring at the place where Lyanna had breathed her last. He felt her presence, still like a wind that never left. And then he heard the voice, low, calm, icy. 17 years. You came slower than I expected, Stark. Ned turned, and there he was. Seer Arthur Dayne. Older, yes, but still terrifying. His armor was worn, but clean. The greatsword Dawn hung at his side, glowing faintly with its eerie white light. His eyes held no malice, only judgment. Arthur, ... double quote, Ned whispered, drawing his blade. How? Arthur stepped forward. Does it matter? Silence stretched between them. You should be dead, Ned said. You should be ashamed, Arthur replied. And then they drew steel. Dawn shimmered in Sir Arthur Dayne's hands like a piece of fallen starlight, silent, unearthly, and full of promise. Eddard Stark's own blade, ice, long since too cumbersome for travel, had been left behind in Winterfell. In its place, he gripped a bastard sword. Nothing compared to the ancestral Valyrian steel of House Stark. It felt almost insulting to raise such a blade against the sword of the morning, almost. But Ned had no illusions. He wasn't here to win. He was here to face what should have ended years ago. Arthur moved first. A sudden flash of motion, as elegant as it was deadly. Ned barely deflected the first strike, his arm shuddering from the impact. The blade hummed with unnatural strength, like it carried not just steel but the judgment of the gods themselves. Harwin stepped forward instinctively, drawing his sword. Jory moved too, but Ned shouted, "No!" They froze. "This is between us," Ned growled, breath heavy. "No one interferes." Arthur circled him like a spectre in armor. "You buried my king, Ned. You buried your honor with him." "I kept my vow," Ned said bitterly, "to my sister, to Jon." Arthur's face twitched at the name. "And what is he now? A bastard, lied to, raised in silence. You let the world believe Rager raped Lyanna. You let Robert dance on their graves." "I protected him the only way I knew how," Ned said, parrying another blow. "Do you know what Robert would have done if he knew the truth? Do you know what the realm would have done?" Arthur's strikes grew heavier, angrier. "Don't speak to me of what the realm would do. You think the realm is just. Do you think it was just when it called us traitors? When it slaughtered children and burned cities? Rhaegar died with honor, and you walked away with your lies and your snow-covered walls, calling it justice." Ned's foot slipped on the dusty stone, but he steadied himself. The ground beneath them was sacred. This was where they had last fought, where Howland Reed had struck Arthur from behind, where blood had soaked the earth and Lyanna had died in her bed of sorrow. Rager stole her. Ned hissed. Arthur's blade stopped inches from Ned's face. "You still believe that?" Arthur's voice cracked not with anger, but heartbreak. 17 years, and you still don't know the truth." Ned's hands trembled. "She wanted to go with him," Arthur said quietly. "Lyanna loved Rager. She chose him. She chose to marry him. The child she bore wasn't the product of lust or war, it was love. And we protected that love with our lives." Ned said nothing. He couldn't, because part of him already knew. Lyanna had whispered it with her final breath, cradling the newborn. "Boy, promise me, Ned." He thought he buried that truth along with her, thought he had done the right thing. But now, standing before the last man who knew the whole truth, it felt like a sin too heavy to carry. "You didn't die," Ned finally said, voice strained. "You were bleeding to death." "I saw it," Arthur nodded. "I was," Howland thought. "I was gone, but the fisherfolk found me later, broken but breathing. I was taken to Starfall. My sister hid me, swore me to silence. And now," Arthur raised his sword again, "now I break that silence. Because the world has forgotten who Rager was. Because Jon deserves to know who he is. Because your silence has lasted long enough." Ned's sword dropped slightly. "You mean to tell the world?" he asked. "I mean to tell him." The name lingered between them. Jon, a boy raised in Winterfell with no name but snow, who knew nothing of dragons, or kings, or prophecy, nothing of the war he was born into. "You'll put a target On his back, Ned said. Arthur's eyes narrowed. And you think he's not already marked? He's of age now. The truth will burn its way out eventually. Would you rather it come from your enemies? Ned's heart thud. D-E-D. That this wasn't about vengeance anymore. It wasn't even about honor. It was about a boy, his son in love, if not in blood. Growing into a man without knowing his place in the world. But what would truth bring? War, chaos, death. Arthur stepped back, lowering his sword slightly. He wasn't here to kill, not truly. That part of him, perhaps, had died at the Tower of Joy. I didn't come here to slay you, Eddard Stark. I came to remind you what you've forgotten. He turned his back and walked into the ruins of the tower. Ned followed cautiously, uncertain whether this was a trap or a reckoning. Inside, by the broken stones and crumbled walls, Arthur knelt beside a wrapped bundle, a sword, Jon's. Birthright, take it, Arthur said. What is it? Ned asked, already knowing. Arthur stood slowly, the dawn light glinting off his armor. The sword Rager left for his son. The last relic of House Targaryen, not melted into history. You protected the boy, Stark, but I protected the legacy. Ned reached for the bundle with shaking hands. The story wasn't over. It had just begun. Jon Snow stood at the edge of the Winterfell courtyard, watching the snow drift lazily down. It was quiet to quiet. The kind of stillness that settles before something breaks. The hush before a truth decides it can't stay hidden anymore. He had always felt like a shadow here. Catelyn's cold stares. The way the lords never quite looked at him as a Stark. Even when Robb treated him like a brother. Even when Arya called him her favorite. There had always been that space unseen but heavy, that said he didn't belong. He used to wonder who his mother was, once, when he was younger. But Ned Stark never spoke of her, ever. No name, no story. Just silence, and that silence spoke volumes. So he buried the questions. But lately, strange things had begun to stir. Maester Luwin had received a raven, not uncommon. But when Jon passed the rookery, he heard the man say a name he'd never heard before. Arthur Dayne. Then came Ser Jorah, returned from a mysterious journey with Lord Stark. He looked exhausted, pale and distant. When Jon asked him what had happened, he only muttered, "Some truths are swords in disguise, Jon, best left sheathed." But the next day, Jon was summoned to the Godswood. His father was waiting. The air beneath the heart tree felt different. The weirwood's face looked more sorrowful than usual, like it had seen something coming and was mourning it already. Ned Stark stood there, hands behind his back, his cloak dusted with snow. He didn't speak right away, just stared at the red leaves falling like blood from the branches. "Come," he finally said. Jon stepped forward, tense. "Am I in trouble?" "No." Double quote silence. Then Ned turned toward him. "I've kept something from you, too long." Jon frowned. "Is this about my mother?" Ned closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. "Yes, and much more." Jon's heart pounded. "My mother, who was she?" "Her name was Lyanna Stark," Ned said. "She was my sister." Jon blinked. "But that makes no sense. That would make me not my son," Ned said softly. "Not by blood." The words cracked through the air like thunder. Jon took a step back, confusion tightening around him. "Then who?" Ned looked up into the falling snow. "Your father was Rager Targaryen." Jon's breath stopped. "No," he whispered. "That can't be. Rager, he kidnapped her. He started the war. Robert never knew the truth, Ned said. Lyanna wasn't taken. She went with him. They were married in secret. You were born at the Tower of Joy, and I was there, holding her hand as she died. The snow was falling harder now. Or maybe the world was just spinning. All these years, Jon said, his voice breaking, you let me believe I was your bastard, because the truth would have gotten you killed, Ned said. Robert would have murdered you before you could speak your first word. I had no choice. Jon shook his head. You let me suffer. You let me be called less, treated like less. I kept you alive. The words hit hard, cold. Final, I don't want this, Jon said. I don't want to be a Targaryen. I don't want any of it. It doesn't matter what you want, Ned said. It's who you are, and you must decide what to do with it. He reached down and pulled a wrapped bundle from the snow near the tree. Jon hadn't noticed it before. Inside was a sword, beautiful, ancient. The metal was not dark like Valyrian steel, but light, almost white, and it shimmered faintly, even in the gloom. This, Ned said, is your father's sword, passed to him by Seer Arthur Dayne, and now passed to you. Jon stared at it, breath shallow. How do you have this? Ned hesitated. Arthur Dayne is alive. Jon's eyes widened. What? He survived the Tower of Joy. He came back, found me, demanded I tell you the truth. And now I fear more is coming. Jon's mind reeled. A sword, a dead knight returned, a truth buried in blood and snow. What does he want? To see you, Ned said. To see the boy he protected from afar. To see if you are ready for what comes next. Jon looked at the sword again. It didn't feel like it belonged to him. Not yet, maybe never. But the blood in his veins, that didn't lie. He wasn't a Stark. He wasn't a Snow. He was something else entirely. And the world would want him dead for it. The wind howled across the Dornish sands like a dying god. And Jon Snow felt every gust bite through him. He wasn't used to this kind of heat. The air was dry, angry, and cracked the skin beneath his eyes. Northern snow had its cruelty, but dawn was a different kind of killer. Beside him rode Ned Stark, grim-faced and silent. They'd ridden hard for weeks, through the King's Road, through the Reach, past suspicious looks and tired horses. Jory Castle had gone ahead to scout. They didn't speak much. What was there to say? A father who wasn't truly a father. A son who wasn't truly a son. Jon wasn't sure who he was anymore. Each night he thought about the sword, the name, the legacy. Rhaegar, Targaryen, Lyanna Stark. The names had weight but no warmth. They were just words carved in history's cold stone. He had imagined his mother before soft features, dark hair like Arya's, a gentle smile, but now she was real. A girl stolen by death too soon. A girl who had loved a man the world called a villain. And Jon was their child, the product of love and lies both. When the tower came into view, Jon felt his heart seize. The Tower of Joy, or what was left of it. Time had not been kind. Most of it lay in ruins, collapsed and buried in dust. A broken monument to a truth no one wanted to remember. Jory waited outside. He looked pale, even under the harsh sun. He's inside, Jory said, nodding toward the ruins. He's been waiting. Jon nodded, trying to keep his breath steady. You don't have to go in alone, Ned said softly. Jon looked at him. Yes, I do. The moment he stepped past the stone archway, Jon felt it a weight in the air. Not magic, not wind. Something older, regret, memory, blood soaked into stone. And there he was, Seer Arthur Dayne. He looked older than Jon expected. Silver streaks through his dark hair, lines around his eyes. But still, he held himself like a knight-born in the songs. He was dressed in simple armor, but at his side hung Don, the legendary blade of House Dayne, glowing faintly in the shadows. When he turned and saw Jon, he didn't bow, didn't smile, just stared. "You have your mother's eyes," Arthur said quietly, "but your father's silence." Jon stepped forward, unsure what to say. "You knew them both." "I fought for them both," Arthur replied. "I bled for them, and I killed for them." Jon swallowed. Why? Why protect them? Why not stop it? Arthur's jaw tensed. Because love is not a choice when it's real, and duty is not a prison when it's for something greater than a crown. Jon didn't know if that made sense, but he listened. "I was sworn to protect Lyanna," Arthur continued. "When Rhaegar left for the Trident, he trusted me with her life. I failed him, she died, but not before she gave you to the world." Jon looked down. "She named me. She named you Aegon." Jon blinked. "No, that's not my name. It was hers to give," Arthur said, stepping closer. "But it is yours to reject. Names are not chains, but blood that never changes. Blood is not what makes a man," Jon said, echoing something Benjen once told him. Arthur almost smiled. "No, but it will determine how the world sees you, and whether it fears you." He reached for the blade at his side and slowly drew it. Jon tensed. "I won't fight." "You," he said. Arthur nodded. "Good, because I have no wish to kill you. But I do need to know if you can carry what comes next." He tossed the blade to the ground between them. Jon stared at it. It pulsed with a strange, gentle light. Not magical, just ancient. Heavy with purpose. "Pick it up," Arthur said. Jon stepped forward. His hands hovered over the hilt. It was cool to the touch. As he gripped it, a strange shiver ran through him. Not pain, not fear, recognition, like the sword knew him. Arthur watched closely. Only a Dayne may carry dawn, or someone worthy of the title Sword of the Morning. But your blood is not ours. Your blood is fire and shadow. So, if the sword accepts you, he paused, then you are more than just a forgotten prince. Jon lifted Dawn. The blade was lighter than he expected, but it rang with power. Arthur bowed his head slightly. "It seems your father chose well." Jon looked down at the sword, then up at the man before him. "I don't know what to do," Jon admitted.
"What
am I supposed to be?" Arthur met his eyes. "A king, a hero, a monster. That choice is yours." He turned away, walking toward the ruined tower's edge, his voice fading. "But know this, the dragons will rise again. And when they do, they will either burn the world or save it." Jon stood alone beneath the broken sky, holding a sword, made from the heart of a falling star, and for the first time, he wondered if the past was not the heaviest thing he carried. It was the future. The raven flew faster than any blade could strike, faster than a whisper in a court full of liars. Within 2 days of Jon's meeting with Seer Arthur Dayne, the message had reached Dragonstone, the Red Keep, and even Riverrun. The bastard of Winterfell was no bastard. He was Aegon, Targaryen, and the realm, as it always did, began to sharpen its knives at Winterfell. Ned Stark sat by the hearth with Maester Luwin, the flames flickering shadows across his tired face. He'd known the truth wouldn't stay buried forever, but he never expected it to be dragged into daylight so violently. Lewin read from the scroll again, frowning. This came from Sunspear, Prince Doran's seal. They've confirmed the rumors. The Danes support the boy, and worse, the mob do as well. Ned stared into the fire. They've waited nearly 2 decades for vengeance. Now they see a dragon's son rise from ashes and they'll wrap him in their own ambition. Lewin hesitated. And what of Robert? Ned said nothing for a long time. Then finally, bitterly, he'll want Jon's head before he ever sees his face. In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon roared with a fury only the gods could survive. Lead to me, the king bellowed, hurling a goblet of wine across the hall. 17 years. My best friend, my brother, Cersei, sat to the side, quiet for once, calculating. She didn't care about bastards or Targaryens, but she cared about threats. And Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, was a threat like no other. Handsome, noble, raised by the North, loved by the people. A Stark and a dragon. The worst combination imaginable. He'll rally the North, she said softly. Then the Riverlands. Perhaps even the Vale. Robert turned on her. Then I'll crush them all. I'll send the whole damn army to Winterfell if I have to. Varys stepped from the shadows. Your Grace, that would start another war. Sybil won. Robert's face twisted. Better that than another Targaryen sitting a throne I bled for. Back in Dorne, Seer Arthur Dayne met with Prince Doran Martell under the shade of a blood-orange tree. The sun was cruel, but Doran never moved from his place. You broke your silence, Doran said. Arthur nodded, and the boy, the prince, asked. He is not a boy anymore, Arthur replied, and he carries his father's heart and his mother's strength. Doran leaned back. Then Westeros is on the brink of rebirth, or ruin. Arthur's eyes narrowed. He must choose what kind of dragon he will be. Jon Snow stood on the battlements of Starfall that night. Staring up at a sky full of stars, he no longer trusted so much had happened so quickly. Dawn hung at his side now, a reminder that his life was no longer his own. Everywhere he went, people bowed, called him Your Grace. They looked at him like he was a dream brought to life, but inside he still felt like Jon, still heard the wind howling through the wall, still remembered Sam's laughter, Ghost's quiet watchfulness, Arya's fierce hugs, Robb's sparring blows. What did a crown mean to a boy raised with nothing? Seer Arthur joined him, silent as always. Jon spoke. First, you told them, didn't you? The Lords of Dawn, the Martells. They needed to know, Arthur said, because Robert will come for you now. He won't allow a dragon to live. I never wanted a throne, Jon said bitterly. I never even wanted a name. Arthur turned to him. That doesn't matter. They'll still fear you. Jon clenched his fists. Then what do I do? Run, kneel, fight? Arthur looked him straight in the eyes. You decide. That's what your father would have done. He chose love over power. You must decide whether to repeat his mistake or correct it. Jon looked back to the stars, a storm brewing in his chest. I'm not Rager, no, Arthur agreed. You're something else. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a scroll, sealed with wax bearing the sigil of House Martell. The Lords of Dawn have pledged swords, ships, and gold. They believe in your claim. Jon didn't move. And you? He asked. Arthur's face was hard to read. I believe in honor. And I believe the realm deserves better than kings who drink themselves to death or queens who kill to feel powerful. He paused. But more than anything, I believe in the son of Lyanna Stark. Jon took the scroll, hands steady despite the weight of it. I won't start a war, he said. Arthur nodded. Then you'd better prepare to survive one. Back in Winterfell, ravens circled above the towers like restless omens. Ned sat in the godswood alone. He whispered the same prayer he had whispered 17 years ago. Forgive me, Lyanna. But the winds offered no answer. Winterfell was no longer quiet. The ravens came by the dozens, their wings black as the secrets they carried. Messages from the Vale, the Riverlands, even the Iron Islands. But the one that struck hardest was from King's Landing. Robert Baratheon was marching north with 20,000 men. He called it a royal progress. But no one believed that. Not Ned, not Maester Luwin, not the bannermen gathering in the great hall with sharpened swords and sharpened questions. Why does the king march with such force? Asked Lord Sherwin. What does he want from the north? Asked Lady Mormont, her voice a growl. The room fell silent when Robb Stark stood. He was older now, no longer the boy Jon had tussled with in the yard. His voice was steady, his eyes cold, like the winter wind. He wants my brother. The word brother sent ripples through the room. Even now, even after the truth had begun to spread, Robb refused to call Jon anything else. Ned stood slowly. Aegon was hidden for a reason. To protect him. And now the truth is out. The realm will tear itself apart to either crown him or kill him. A murmur of unease spread. Maester Luwin coughed softly. There is more. Ned looked at him. Luwin unrolled a fresh raven scroll. Lord Tywin Lannister has declared. The North complicit in treason. He calls for Lord Stark's immediate arrest and the surrender of Aegon Targaryen. Robb's fist slammed into the table. He dares. He sends no army but writes letters with blood on them. He won't need an army if the other kingdoms join him, Ned said darkly. Robert's word still matters. The Lannisters' gold still speaks loud, and this is the kind of truth that makes enemies out of friends. Lady Mormont rose. Then what do we do, Lord Stark? And Ned, for the first time in many years, felt unsure of the ground beneath him. We prepare for war, he said finally. But we pray for peace. South of Winterfell, Jon rode with Arthur Dayne along the King's Road, flanked by Dorne's scouts and silent bannermen. The air around him crackled with tension. He could feel it in every glance, every whispered title. Your Grace, my Prince, heir to the dragon. He hated it, but there was no turning back now. He looked over at Arthur, who hadn't spoken much since they left Starfall. You think they'll fight for me? Jon asked. Arthur nodded slowly. Some already do. The rest will choose a side soon enough. That's the danger of truth, leaves no middle ground. Jon exhaled, frustrated. I'm not a king. I don't even want to be a lord. Arthur gave a bitter smile. Your father said the same, and yet his choices shaped the fate of thousands. I'm not my father. No, you're not. You're still young, still unsure, but I see what he saw. Jon frowned. What was that? Arthur turned to him, eyes sharp. Someone who could change the world, or burn it. At Riverrun, Catelyn Stark received the raven in silence. Her hands trembled only once, then stilled. She stared out over the river, the wind tugging at her. Auburn hair, Aegon Targaryen, she whispered bitterly. She'd hated the boy for years, thought him a stain on her marriage, a reminder of Ned's betrayal. But now she knew the truth. He wasn't Ned's sin, he was Lyanna's son, Rhaegar's heir, and still, it didn't matter. He was a threat to everything she had built for her children. In King's Landing, Robert drank more than ever. His council spoke of war, banners, ravens, but Robert only listened when Renly brought news from the Riverlands. Lord Hoster Tully won't send men against Ned, Renly said. Not yet, Robert grunted. Then we'll make them. We'll break the Starks, like I broke Rhaegar. One dragon dies like another. Varys stepped forward. Carefully, your grace. If I may speak plainly. Robert glared. You always do. Varys bowed. This is no longer just about Jon Snow. If you kill him, you don't kill a bastard. You kill the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. You kill the North's honor. You kill the hope of Dawn. You kill the idea of something purer than what we've become. Robert hurled his goblet again. I kill a threat. Far to the east, in the free cities, whispers began to reach the ears of another Targaryen, Daenerys Stormborn. She sat in a quiet garden in Braavos, her silver hair hidden beneath the red cloak when a hooded man approached. The dragon lives, he said. I do, she answered simply. No, the man said. Another in Westeros, a boy, now a man, Aegon, the true-born son of Rhaegar. Dany's heart turned to ice. A brother. A rival, the man corrected. Back in the north, Jon Snow stood before the gates of Winterfell. Cloaked in dusk and destiny, the gates creaked open, and Robb Stark was waiting. The two stared at each other across the courtyard. Brother and brother. Boy and king, blood and legacy. You came back, Robb said. I had to, Jon replied. You bring war, I bring truth. Robb clenched his jaw. Then let's see if Winterfell still has room for both. And behind them, the cold wind blew harder than ever, because winter had come. But so had the dragon. The great hall of Winterfell had never felt so heavy. Every bannerman of the north had gathered Karstocks, Umbers, Tallhearts, Mormonts, even the Blackwoods from the Riverlands. They came not for a feast, but for a reckoning. At the end of the hall stood Robb Stark, tall and proud, his father's cloak across his shoulders. Beside him stood Jon Snow or Aegon Targaryen, now his presence. A wound reopened in every heart, a truth that cut deeper than steel. And in the middle sat Lord Eddard Stark, hands folded, face weary. He had buried the truth once. Now it was about to bury him. Jon stepped forward first. I never asked for a crown. I never asked for war. But it's coming. And if we fight each other, Robert Baratheon will tear the north apart. Murmur spread. Some eyes were filled with doubt, others with awe. Lady Mage Mormont stood. Is it true? Are you really Lyanna's son? Jon nodded slowly. She died bringing me into this world. And my father, my real father, was Rhaegar. Targaryen. A gasp rolled through the hall like thunder. Great Jon Umber stood Rhaegar's blood. You expect us to kneel to a dragon? Jon looked him straight in the eye. No, I don't want your knee. I want your swords, for the war that's coming. Because Robert marches north, and he won't stop with me. Why should we trust you? Spat Rickard Karstark. You've got fire in your veins. Maybe you'll burn us too. Ned rose finally. His voice was hoarse but steady. Because I raised him, and I'd trust him with my life. That quieted the room for a moment. Then Robb spoke. And what if the fire burns too bright? Father, What if it blinds him to who he really is? Jon turned to Robb, eyes hard. You think I want this? I grew up in your shadow. Ate with servants, sparred with ghosts. I've spent my whole life not belonging. Now you think I'd trade that for a throne? Robb clenched his fists. You think you're still my brother? I am your brother. No, you're a Targaryen. And everything you touch brings war. Jon's jaw tightened. That may be true, but war is coming either way. The only choice we have is whether we face it together. Outside the walls of Winterfell, the northern soldiers drilled with frost-covered swords and tired eyes. The snow was falling heavier each day. Scouts brought news Daily Robert's forces had crossed the neck. Lannister banners flanked him. Tyrell supply wagons rolled close behind, 20,000 strong, and they were coming fast. The North could barely raise half that, even with Dawn's promised reinforcements. The odds weren't good. In the Godswood, Jon stood alone, staring up. At the face carved into the heart tree, the red eyes seemed to bleed in the snow. I don't know what you want from me, he whispered. I don't know who I'm meant to be. You are not meant to be anything, came Arthur Dayne's voice behind him. You're meant to choose. Jon turned. They don't trust me. They won't, Arthur said. Not until they need you. Jon gritted his teeth. And what then? I become their king, their weapon, their excuse. Arthur stepped closer. You become what your father never had the chance to be, the king that never lies. The king that chooses mercy over pride, the one who does not bend because the realm demands it, but because it needs it. Jon looked down at Dawn, sheathed at his side. The weight of it was unbearable. I don't want to be king, he said again. Arthur studied him. Good, that's why you might deserve to be. At Moat Cailin, Robert Baratheon stood beside Lord Tywin Lannister, overlooking the frozen marshes. The king was not the warrior he once was. His belly sagged, his eyes dulled, but his rage that remained sharp. How far are we from Winterfell? He asked. Less than a fortnight, Tywin said. But that won't be necessary. Robert raised an eyebrow. You planning to talk them into giving me the boy? No, Tywin said. I'm planning to burn the North until they beg us to take him. Robert grunted. Good. No more dragon bastards. No more lies. Just fire and blood. Tywin gave a small, humorless smile. Exactly. Back in Winterfell, Catelyn sat beside Ned for the first time in days. Her eyes were distant, her voice low. All these years. I hated that boy, she whispered. Ned didn't speak. I thought he was your mistake, your shame. He was never mine, Ned said softly. But I've loved him like he was. Catelyn looked at her husband, tears welling. Do you think the gods will forgive us? Ned took her hand. Only if he survives. The next morning, Jon stood on the walls as the horns blew once. Then twice, a raven had arrived. He opened the scroll. With trembling fingers. The king's army reaches the Wolfswood in 8 days. Surrender, the boy or face annihilation. Jon crushed the letter in his hand. Behind him, the banners of House Stark and House Dayne were raised side by side, and beside them, for the first time in 17 years, rose a black banner with a red 3-headed dragon. The dragon had returned to the north, and war was no longer coming. It was here, snow fell heavy over the Wolfswood as the two armies stood across from each other. The banners of the Baratheon stag flapped like beasts hungry for blood, golden against a grey sky. At the head of the host, King Robert Baratheon, steel-plated and red-eyed with fury. rode forward with his warhammer resting across the saddle dot. Opposite him stood Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen wrapped in black and silver, with Dawn sheathed at his side and a look on his face that wasn't fear, but something colder, resolve. Behind him stood Ned Stark, Robb, Seir, Arthur Dayne, and the men of the Northern Dawn. Their numbers were fewer, their armor older, but their eyes did not waver. They would not kneel, not this time. Robert raised a hand, a gesture for parley. Jon rode forward alone, cloak trailing behind him like a shadow long overdue. They stopped 10 paces apart. "You've grown," Robert said, voice thick with disdain. "So have you," Jon replied quietly, "mostly around the waist." Robert laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "You've got your father's mouth." Rager smiled like that when I crushed his chest and Jon's jaw tensed. "I didn't come to fight you," he said, "but I will if I must." Robert spat into the snow. "You should have stayed a Snow. Boy, you should have stayed nothing." "I was never nothing," Jon said. "You just wanted me to be." Robert pointed his warhammer at Jon. "You are the son of my enemy. You are a dragon, and dragons burn everything." "I'm not here to burn the realm," Jon said. "I'm here to keep it from burning." Robert's eyes narrowed. "Then kneel. Renounce your name. Take the black. Leave Westeros. I don't care. Just disappear." Jon didn't blink. "Won't run from who I am." Robert's grip tightened. "Then you die with it." The parley ended. The lines were drawn. There would be no peace, not now. Back in the northern camp, Robb approached Jon as the battle horns echoed through the trees. The snow muffled everything, even fear. "I was wrong," Robb said. Jon looked at him, surprised. "You are my brother," Robb said. "Always were, always will be." They shook hands, no words left between them. Ned approached next. His face was pale, but his voice was steel. "I made you a promise, Jon, to protect you. Today I break it." Jon looked at him, confused. "Because you don't need protection anymore," Ned said. "You need to lead." Then Sir Arthur Dayne stepped forward, unsheathing Dawn, and held it out to Jon once more. "Are you ready?" he asked. Jon stared at the blade. He thought of Lyanna, her dying breath. "Promise me, Ned." He thought of Rager, who died believing his child would bring balance, not more blood. He took the sword, and he stepped onto the battlefield. The battle was Cosno, steel, and screams. The Baratheon lines surged like a tidal wave, but the North held strong. Dawn's spears flanked them from the east, cutting through Lannister footmen. Robb led the cavalry charge, his wolf banner dancing beside the three-headed dragon. At the heart of it all was Jon. He moved like a storm with Dawn in his hand. The blade shimmered with every stroke, as if remembering what it was forged for. Knights fell, horses reared, fire seemed to light in his eyes. But then Robert, he crashed through the lines like a battering ram, swinging his warhammer with fury that made men scatter. Jon met him head-on, steel rang against steel.